Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the different groups of angiosperms. So there used to be just two clades that were recognized, the monocots and what we call the dicots. But they realized that the dicots were actually polyphyletic, and so now we've split the dicots into several clades. So this is our current arrangement here of what we have. So we have what we call the basal angiosperms, the Magnoliids, and the eudicots. So what we call the basal angiosperms include these groups here. We have our Magnoliids, and then the two biggest groups of all are the monocots and the eudicots. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our basal angiosperms. If I can find my pen, sorry. Here we go. Okay, so our basal angiosperms include three lineages. Including Amborella, which has some kind of interesting sort of links to its evolutionary past. It lacks the same type of xylem cells. It does have xylem cells, but not of the same type of other angiosperms. And its egg development is more similar to what we see in gymnosperms. So it's a little bit more linked to its evolutionary past. We also have in this group the water lilies, and also the star anise. Whoops. And yes, that is the same plant that gives you the flavoring. So those are our basal angiosperms, so more closely related to the further back common ancestor of the angiosperms. All right, so let's talk Magnoliids. This is a very big group. I'm sorry, this isn't a very big group. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. The monocots and dicots are. This is actually comparatively not that small, but not that big. About 8,000 species. So I guess, I mean, that's nothing to snuff at, but so we have in this group, of course, the magnolias that we all know and love, also laurels, also black peppers in this group, cinnamon, and avocados. So lots of interesting things. So these do share some characteristics with the basal angiosperms, but are considered more closely related to monocots and eudicots. All right, so now here's a really big group, the monocots. About 70,000 species. So really diverse. So they get their name because they have one cotyledon. What's a cotyledon? That's that embryonic seed leaf that I talked about in the developing plant zygote. The monocots, an important synapomorphy of the monocots is that they have this one cotyledon. Other things we see in the monocots are parallel leaf venation. What does that mean? That means their leaves, if we look at them, the veins in the leaves run parallel. We also often see floral parts in multiples of 3. Another common thing we see is what we call a fibrous root system. And so a fibrous root system, and I'll talk about this more in chapter 33, but a fibrous root system is when instead of having like one main root, you have like several roots about the same size, and they form this kind of really dense mat like this. So this includes grasses, which is a huge group. And many agricultural crops are included this. So examples of monocots would be things like wheat, corn, rice. Also things like date palms, lilies, orchids. All of these are monocots. And then there is the eudicots. Probably my favorite clade. I don't really know why. They just are. Over 170,000 species, so real big. So these guys have two cotyledons, so two embryonic seed leaves. They have a pattern of branching. They have what we call branching venation. So that means in their leaves, we get this branching off. I'm an awful drawer, but here we go. So a branching pattern, like something you'd see maybe in, think of like a maple leaf or something like that. We have floral parts in 5s, or actually it's in 4 or 5s, or multiples thereof. And most of them have a root system we would know as a taproot, where we have one big root like that. I guess that's the ground. And then sometimes you get some smaller roots off like this, but you have like this one main root. So they have a taproot system. Here's a lovely figure. Okay, so here's a nice comparison of monocots versus eudicots. And the other structure that differs between the two of them that I haven't mentioned yet, but that is significant, is that the vascular tissue, the way that it is arranged in monocots versus eudicots, differs quite a bit. So in monocots, the vascular tissue, the xylem and phloem, make up these little bundles called vascular bundles, and in a monocot stem, they're just scattered around. Whereas in a eudicot stem, they are in a very clear circular pattern. And we'll look at lots of examples of these in leaves. But here's another, in lab. But here's another example of the parallel leaf venation versus the netted leaf venation. One cotyledon versus two. Fibrous roots versus tap roots. Floral organs in 3s versus floral organs in 4s or 5s. And another difference is in pollen grain aperture. So this aperture is a little area in the pollen grain where the pollen coat is a little less thick, and it's the place where typically a pollen tube can germinate from. So in monocots we just have one aperture, and in eudicots we have 3. So finally, just a little mention about the importance of seed plants to humans. They are the dominant plant on the planet right now. So they're really important just simply because of how many of them there are. So they're really important to soil formation and retention. And as a food source, you really can't underestimate them. 80% of all calories consumed by humans come from 12 seed plant crops. Corn, rice, wheat, potatoes, sweet potatoes, coconut. Pretty much all of your major food staples are coming from seed plants. It's not always the seed directly we're eating, but it's coming from a seed plant. Also, coffee, which is very important to me, from a seed plant. Tea, if you like that sort of thing. Chocolate, spices, livestock feed, all of these things, not to mention wood and paper, and numerous medicines. And what the figure we're looking at here is really just a few of many compounds that we have synthesized or derived from different types of seed plants. So they have been tremendously important to our life, and let's not forget they do photosynthesis, giving us oxygen to breathe. So they're pretty darned important. Okay, that wraps up seed plants. So I'll see you in the next chapter, everybody.